Greetings, people of the galaxy. I am Zach, and I am back again for another tier list video. Today we're talking about The Mandalorian, and I feel like it's been a while since we've talked about this show on this channel, but we're going to be ranking all 16 episodes of the show onto this tier list. At the top of the list, we've got This Is the Way for the best of the best, then we have A, B, C, and then This Is Not the Way for the episodes that were the worst of the worst. So without further ado, let's dive on it. So the first episode of the series, I'm going to put in B tier. I thought it was solid. It gave us a sense of who Din was, and then it introduces us to really the thing that starts to drive the show, which is Grogu, and what Din will ultimately do with him. And it was fun. I also really enjoyed the music. I think that was one of the things that initially jumped out at me about this episode. I had the theme song stuck in my head for like a week after this point, but I think it did its job. It wasn't amazing. It was just a solid 7 out of 10 episode. The second episode I thought was a marginal improvement over the first one. Had some cool fight scenes. It continued to build upon really establish the relationship between Grogu and Din, as well as introduced a nice character in Quill. It was fun, and I really enjoyed the fight between the Mudhorn and Din, and then Grogu ultimately saving him. That was a cool moment. Definitely one of the more memorable moments of the show for me. The third episode I thought was the best yet. We get to see how the Mandalorians are kind of hiding in the sewers, basically. We get to see the process of their armor getting smelted with the Beskar, and then Din ultimately decides to save the child, or Grogu. I mean, at this point it's the child, but he saves the child from the Imperials, and then it really kicks things off. And episode 4, probably one of my least favorite of the series, because we've seen this archetype kind of episode before so many times. Hell, we've even seen it in Star Wars. I believe they did it in the Clone Wars. But you just have a few warriors protecting a village of innocent people, and they train the villagers to fight. It's just the 7 samurai archetype, and it's been done time and time again. I just didn't think it was super interesting. We met Cara Dune, and I thought she was okay. And then it's just really kind of a filler episode, and the best thing that it does is it continues to develop that Grogu and Din relationship. And aside from that, I just wasn't really into it. Same goes for episode 5. I'm gonna put it in This Is Not the Way. This might be my least favorite episode of the entire series. It was cool to see Tatooine, and eventually this does set up the Boba Fett return, but that's about it. I didn't really enjoy anything about this episode. I didn't like the gunslinger. I thought he was kind of annoying. Fennec was cool, but then she got killed off, or so we thought. So this episode just kind of felt somewhat of a waste of time, and also like a little, haha, here's Tatooine. You guys love Tatooine, right? But it wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but I think it was the worst episode of this series. Episode 6, I believe it's called The Prisoners, when they break into the prison. I liked this episode. I think it was probably my favorite. I'm gonna put it probably here. Probably my second favorite so far that we've covered. And it was just cool to see Mando work as part of a team, and then ultimately they betray him, and it was equally as cool to see him disassemble the team one by one, like he was Batman or something. And it kind of turned into a horror film where he was just one by one hunting down each member. And I did enjoy Bill Burr a little bit. I know a lot of people didn't like him in this episode, but I thought he was a fun little addition to Star Wars. Definitely a character we've never kind of seen before. So that was kind of fresh for me. Episode 7 I thought was fun as well. It set up the intense finale that's to come. We kill off Quill, which was sad, and then it ends with Grogu being taken by the Imperials. So a lot of emotion in this episode, and emotion's always good, and it was probably the most emotional episode of the show at that point, so I'm gonna put it right there in B tier. And then the finale of season 1 I'm gonna put in A tier, because it paid off on all that emotion, and we really see what Grogu means to Din at this point, and he starts to get over his prejudice against droids, which was touching. And we get introduced to Moff Gideon, who's played by the great Giancarlo Esposito, one of my favorite actors. Loved him in Breaking Bad, as does pretty much everybody. But it was just a great accumulation of everything that had happened to this point, and I thought it was a very, very strong finale. Moving on to season 2, we've got the first episode, which I'm going to put in B tier. I really enjoyed just the way that they humanized the Tusken Raiders a little here. Prior to this, it was kind of just assumed that they were savages who killed and murdered people without reason, but this definitely painted them in a more humanizing light, really, and I thought that was nice. I also liked Cobb Vanth. I thought he was really cool. Definitely hope we see him again. The CGI Crate Dragon looked incredible. I definitely wasn't expecting special effects of that high quality or CGI of that high quality for a show like this, but man, they pulled it off. It looked like it had a $200 million budget. That's how good it looked. And then we get the return of Boba Fett at the end, which was an iconic moment for the show. So definitely a strong season opening for this episode. Now, the second episode was fine. I'm going to put it in C tier. It just kind of felt like the show was building to something huge, and then we get a small episode like this. And it was fine. Like, I didn't hate the episode. I guess my expectations weren't met. But that's partially on me. But overall, the episode wasn't super special to me. The spiders were cool, but and Frog Lady was kind of funny, but just not a super memorable episode for me. So I'm gonna put it in C tier. I actually probably put it above that one. Then we have episode 3, which brought Bo-Katan back, and I really like this episode a lot. I'm gonna put it in A tier because Bo-Katan is a great character. It was fantastic to see her again. They had some cool fight sequences, and then we get to see some cool Imperial ships and how the Mandalorians take the ships over. And then we get Ahsoka name dropped, which was exciting. And I just liked the planet that this episode took place on. It was really cool, kind of like Boston on the wharf kind of feel to it. So I just think they did a nice job with the set design. I'm going to put this in A tier. Really enjoyed that episode. And then we have episode 4, where he goes back to Navarro and works with Cara Dune and Greef Karga. This was also a good episode, honestly. I might even put this above that episode, because while it didn't have any of the cool character reveals, it did begin to set up things for the sequel trilogy, which I think badly needs to happen. I don't know how much in the way you can do to improve the sequel trilogy, but the fact that they're kind of starting to set things up that build toward that in The Mandalorian was nice. And I also thought it was an exciting episode, fast-paced episode that dipped into the lore behind the eventual First Order, I guess. So I appreciated that. I really wasn't expecting to like this episode as much because I wanted to see Ahsoka and they were putting it off for another episode, but I did very much enjoy this episode. I'm putting the Ahsoka episode in This Is the Way, and I really don't feel like I have to explain myself that much for this, but I will. Ahsoka is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars. It was amazing to see her on screen in live action for the first time. I thought Rosario Dawson did a nice job, and I thought that really, from a filmmaking perspective, this episode was beautiful. Just the way that the set looked, the fight sequences, some of the shots, some of the cinematography, just amazing. I think this may be one of the most iconic episodes of The Mandalorian. I just absolutely love this episode. It's my favorite of the series, and you're not going to see an episode go higher than this. The Boba Fett episode, I'm going to put in probably upper B tier. Initially, when I first watched this episode, I loved it, but I've since rewatched it a couple times, and it's still enjoyable, but really most of the episode is just action, and once you get over the fact that, like, oh my god, Boba Fett's awesome, it's really just a okay episode, maybe a bit above that. So I'm gonna put it in B tier, but I can understand why it might be higher for Boba Fett lovers. I will say, we did talk about this on the Evil Ewok podcast, but the way that the episode is shot looks a little amateurish. It looks a little like it's a fan film. I don't know if that's because it's outside in the wilderness, and that's where a lot of fan films tend to take place because they don't have the budget to make everything look Star Warsy. But there's just a little gripe. Not too important, but it's going to be in B tier. And then we have the 7th episode of the 2nd season. I liked this episode. I'm going to put it in low A tier. It really shows how far Din is willing to go to save Grogu. I mean, he takes his helmet off and lets other people see his face. So that was a huge character moment. I also was not expecting them to make Bill Burr's character as sympathetic as they did, but damn it, they did. And this episode was like a sleeper for me. Like I did not expect it to be this good, and yet it was. And we have the finale of season 2, and I know that this would be and this is the way for a lot of people. And rightfully so. I mean, it brought Luke Skywalker back, the Luke Skywalker that we always wanted to see, not the Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi. So I can understand why, like 99% of you would put it in this is the way. But for me, I'm gonna put it in A tier. Probably behind the season 1 finale, just because, and I've kind of beaten this horse dead at this point, but I feel like it put the main characters in too passive of a position and let Luke Skywalker steal the show, which is fine. Like, it works for Star Wars, but I think on the scale of The Mandalorian, it's not smart to put your main character on the sideline for like the biggest moment of the series. Like, if you can understand where I'm coming from, that like works for Star Wars, like, because Luke is one of the biggest heroes in Star Wars, but for The Mandalorian, not sure that worked, at least not for me. But that is the complete list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? Remember, this is just my opinion, and let me know what your rankings would be. Remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for all things Star Wars. I'm Zach, and I'll see you in the future.